Hey everyone, this is Dr. Syed Haider of My Go-To Doc and My Go-To Stack, and this is our weekly live stream. Some of the support people behind the scenes, I'm not sure where they are, if they're in the right place or not. So we're gonna just try to wing it and do this by myself until hopefully they show up. If you have any questions for me, send them in the chat. It seems to work from Facebook okay, and I think it works from Rumble maybe. I'm not sure if it works properly from Twitter. So to start with, I usually have a list of questions from the prior week since the last live stream, but I don't have access to those right now unless I can find them somewhere. So I will start with one of the tweets that I put out because that got a lot of questions and I can answer those. So anyway, I'll just go ahead and read it. So someone had asked me about taking medicine for hypertension. My response is generalizable to basically everything your modern medical doctor tries to treat you with. I personally would never take blood pressure medicine or recommend it to anyone for chronic hypertension. And the key here is chronic. I do think that Western medicine or the Western medical approach can be quite helpful in the short term in the emergency room or ICU at saving your life. Anyway, treating blood pressure or any other chronic illness belies a complete misunderstanding of the nature of the body and health. This applies to nearly every quote unquote medicine, or perhaps literally every quote unquote medicine taken for chronic illness today. I mean, I didn't go through every single one in my mind before writing this, but most of them at least. This applies. They are the worst kind of palliative care, which keeps you somewhat comfortable while it oftentimes ends up killing you faster. For example, see the ICU COVID protocols. And I know, I highly respect Pierre Corey and other people, Peter McCullough, et cetera. Pierre Corey was an ICU doc for a long time, and he wrote a piece defending the ICU COVID protocols. So I understand his perspective, but you can't say with a straight face that putting somebody on morphine and taking care of their pain will never end up killing them faster. It is certainly possible that when you suppress somebody's respiratory drive, their desire to breathe, by keeping them as comfortable as possible, that may end up speeding up their death. So both with painkillers as well as benzodiazepines, which help to calm people down. Those are oftentimes given as palliative care in the ICU, and they were given in some of the COVID protocols. So anyway, we live in a world of cause and effect, so we can use our rational mind to figure out why things happen and fix them. So this is key. We don't live in like some sort of magical realm where things just happen for no apparent reason. Regardless of what you believe, whether you believe in just materialism or spiritualism, God, whatever you believe in, there is cause and effect. That's the way the world works, so that we can make sense of our reality. And if you believe in spiritual realm, then there are spiritual causes and effects. So either way, or in any case, there is cause and effect. So if you see an effect in the world, like a disease, it has one cause or multiple causes that gave rise to it. So even a child understands that if something is caused by something else, the way to make that thing stop is to address the cause, right? So anyway, typical hypertension is due to a number of causes, various quote unquote stressors like chemicals, inflammatory foods, negative thoughts, beliefs, emotions, childhood traumas, excess work, lack of sleep, excess blue light, lack of infrared and UV due to being exposed to a lot of glass filtered sunlight, etc. And you can go into all of these, but I think people get the point that they're, and all of those things interplay with your genetic predispositions and what you've been through in your life, and they give rise to something like chronic high blood pressure, or substitute any disease in there. So hypertension is a result of some combination of these and possibly more, and it is a message from your body as clear as the pain from a stubbed toe, and the message is stop doing that. Whatever it is you're doing, stop doing it. Okay. If instead of stopping, you just keep kicking the brick with your bare foot, obviously things will go downhill fast. So when you stub your toe, if you just keep stubbing it or just, start to slam it, for some weird reason into that thing that you initially stubbed it on, it's going to rapidly get a lot worse, right? So if you don't listen to that pain, it will get worse. Same as if a little baby puts their hand near a fire and starts to feel the heat and gets closer and closer and burns themselves. If they just persist in getting closer and not pulling their hand away, it won't end up good. So even if you numb yourself up and can't feel the ridiculous levels of pain anymore, for example, you take blood pressure medicine to suppress the message, it's not going to end well, right? Even if someone convinces you to chop your foot off and numb that up till it heals, so you can just keep swinging your leg in this direction that for some reason you want to keep swinging it in. For example, you cut out your thyroid, your prostate, whatever. Or recently, I saw this on McCullough's Substack that this actually applies to this exact situation. If you burn the nerves to your renal arteries to get rid of your blood pressure. So there's this apparently very simple, quote unquote, safe procedure where an interventional radiologist, I guess, burns the nerves. Okay, so somebody jumped in and cut me off. Anyway, I'm going to keep going here. So your body will downregulate the receptors the blood pressure medicine binds to. So this is the example of high blood pressure. Your body when you put in a medication for high blood pressure, your body, that medication combines to certain receptors in your body to have its effect. And your body still getting all the signals to create high blood pressure, to express this message to you, will look at the situation and be like, well, why is the blood pressure suddenly lower than I want it to be? Oh, it's this medication combining with these receptors. Now let's delete some of those receptors, from our cells so that medication stops doing that, right? So let's go back to the balanced state that I wanted to be in, given all the signals that I'm getting, right? So there are messages coming in from the internal, external environment, and I'm interpreting those messages to mean, I'm speaking for your body, to mean that the blood pressure needs to go up and a bunch of other things need to change, right, in order to deal with that and relay the message to you that you kicked a brick, right? Stop doing that. So anyway, it downregulates the receptors, blood pressure goes back up. Eventually, it doesn't happen instantly. Body needs some time to adjust. So on the way up, or on the road, on the path of adding medications, it needs time to adjust. And same on the path of removing medications or decreasing them, it needs time to adjust. So these two processes happen gradually, and you need to accept that if you're already on medications, it's going to be a gradual process of removal. Anyway, because of this, eventually you need more of the medication or you need other medications to control the quote unquote problem, the expression of the real problems, which are all the causes, but the end result that you're seeing, at least one of the end results, right? This is not the only thing that's going wrong in your body. It's just one of the first signals or signs. There's a lot of other stuff going wrong in your body from all those same causes that are causing the high blood pressure, which is one of the reasons why it's so bad to just treat that one thing and ignore the root causes, because those root causes are also creating dysfunction in every other organ everywhere in your body. It's not just in your blood pressure. It's a systemic problem. Eventually, the medications don't work anymore because of the way the body is trying to fight them off. And along the way, you've continued to get sicker because while the body's unable to adequately express its dismay at your continued obstinance in doing what is harmful to you, it will try to send the message in a series of increasingly frantic and louder ways by breaking other processes or organ systems. Like I just said, other things are under a lot of stress as well, causing things like acid reflux, ulcers, irritable bowel syndrome, arthritis, heart disease, kidney damage, strokes, diabetes, or whatever else really that it is that you're particularly prone to. So I can't, guess, but there are, a short list of things that, you find with the causes that we tend to have in the Western world that are affecting us. And while that's happening, you'll also collect a laundry list of side effects from the medication or multiple medications that you've been put on, many of which will be diagnosed as their own diseases. Very frequently, this is the case. Doctors almost never identify side effects from diseases. They just name new diseases when you come back to them. So don't take medications. Don't go to so-called doctors, quote unquote doctors. Listen to yourself and examine your life and figure out what it is you're doing wrong that's resulting in the message being sent, whatever that message is, whatever the disease is. There are only so many things it can be. It's not a long list. Of course, it can be complicated. And one of the things that's important to understand, this came out during the questions after this tweet, is that when you suppress the message, it's just like you're numbing the pain, right? So that you don't feel it. You're becoming numb. And then if you are completely numb, you will end up killing yourself in short order or becoming extremely disabled just by bumping into things all the time and those things getting infected. Like, somebody with a diabetic foot, they're very prone to ulcers because they just keep damaging their toes and their feet because they can't feel what's going on inside their shoes. They're just walking around on numb feet all the time. And, they're pushing their foot down in the wrong way, or, it's just all sorts of stuff is going wrong. The tissues are just being sheared in the wrong ways. There's this stress in the wrong places and they can't tell what's happening. And so it just gets damaged more and more and more. You can, if you're super careful, learn to live with that situation of a completely numb foot by taking extremely good care of your feet, having very well fitted shoes, going to a podiatrist, making sure everything is perfect all the time and checking constantly, right? Like looking at your foot, cleaning it up, making sure there's no damage that you can't feel. Or you could just, be able to sense pain. And so somebody with a diabetic foot, it's going to take a while to reverse that damage. It is possible. You have to reverse the diabetes, of course, and then the nerves will grow back, but it takes like 6 to 12 months for nerves to grow back. But it can happen as long as you put out the fire that's causing the initial problem, that's causing the nerve damage. They will recover. They're trying to recover. But if you are actively numbing yourself up by taking, for example, blood pressure medication or thyroid medication or heart medication or whatever medication to suppress a symptom or a sign like a high blood pressure, there's some of these signs that we are blessed to be able to see, which our ancestors wouldn't have been able to see. So the illness comes with the ability to cure it, or at least the knowledge and the capability to detect it and to cure it, right? So these early warning signs, they've come to a people that have also been given the ability to see them, right? So our ancestors didn't have these kind of things because they weren't exposed to the same stressors that we're exposed to, the same toxins, and they had a more natural lifestyle that just precluded these kind of things happening. It wasn't that they died earlier, it's that they didn't have these, right? So the average death the age of death was perhaps in the 40s. But if you made it past the bottleneck of like 5 years old, if you didn't die in the first 5 years, then you lived to 60, 70, 80, 90. So and if you didn't die from like an accident or like in a war or from some sort of infectious disease, right? So if you missed those things, if you got past 5 and you missed accidents, war, infectious diseases, then you lived a very long and healthy life in the pre-industrial era, in the as a hunter-gatherer or whatever. So if you're actively suppressing signs, then you can't really deal with the underlying problem as well. So when you're not sensitive to the message being sent to you, you will have more trouble fixing the underlying causes. You'll have more trouble even figuring out what the underlying causes are in your specific case for your high blood pressure. So just from my own life, I had migraines that got more and more frequent. They started when I was a child for myriad reasons, whatever those reasons were. At the time I started getting migraines, probably something to do with shots that I had gotten and antibiotics that had been given to me as a baby, and other stressors and leaky gut, and probably food issues. I was probably reacting to some foods. I would have this horrible migraine, I would throw up, and then the migraine would go away. So it was probably something I was eating, but most people could eat that stuff and not have migraines. So there were other initial causes that led to me being intolerant to those foods. Regardless, my solution became just taking like 400, 800 milligrams of ibuprofen, just like blasting it right away. At the first sign of an oncoming headache, take like 800 milligrams of ibuprofen, and you can like cut it short. It won't happen. And so eventually, the headaches, they, you start getting them a little bit more frequently, and you're still using the ibuprofen. And one day I was just like, you know what, I don't want to address this in this way anymore. Ibuprofen is really quite harmful. It harms your gut bacteria. I started learning more about comprehensive health, and, realized that, ibuprofen has like antibiotic effects. It's destroying your microbiome. If you're taking it frequently, it affects your heart. You can damage your heart if you take a lot of NSAIDs. There's a lot of, negative effects of these things that may not be, you can raise your blood pressure. All kinds of things can happen with frequent use of NSAIDs and painkillers in general, as well as Tylenol. I didn't really use Tylenol that much, but that also has a whole laundry list of issues for the liver, etc. Number one cause of liver failure in the United States. Anyway, so I stopped. I just like quit cold turkey with the ibuprofen and just said, whatever may come, I'm just going to manage it. And so then I became much more aware of what was causing my headaches, right? So I became aware that, how stress had a part to play, how lack of sleep, how what I ate affected me. If I suddenly became really angry and started yelling and stuff, I might get a headache, if, and I started to notice how like hot and cold affected me. So I started noticing all these things that I was completely unaware of before, when I was just blocking the signal, right? I wasn't letting myself experience my reality in a deep way, and really thinking about, what's going on here? What is the message being sent to me? And so all of those different like causes and things that played into it, some are more superficial, some are deeper causes. And obviously to get to the deepest levels, you need to fix whatever happened as a child, right? You need to address the emotional issues that affected you as a child, the physical things that affected you, whatever, right? Because they started way back then. And even if a disease develops like in your 30s, 40s, 50s, the root is usually something in childhood, oftentimes, not always. You might have been doing everything right. It's unusual and rare in this world, but it's possible you were doing everything right and nothing wrong, perfect diet, not harming yourself in any way, until a certain point, like 25 or 30, you have to get like a meningitis vaccine or whatever, and maybe that threw you off. Regardless, most people, the root is in their childhood or somewhere in their past, and that's the initial kind of thing that pushes them towards an illness of some sort. And then it kind of snowballs. The illness gets worse because they're not addressing the underlying cause. cause or causes, or other illnesses pile on because, again, they're not addressing the underlying causes. So it's trying to express itself in multiple ways throughout your body. It's affecting your whole body. And if you don't address the initial, like, clinical manifestation, other clinical manifestations pop up as other things start to break, or you're blocking the signal and that's making it worse itself, or you're getting side effects from the drugs you're using to block the signal, etc. All right, so let's see. Looks like we have a list of questions that we collected during the week now, but I'll just keep going through some of the questions I got. Like my question, does my 20-year-old have rheumatoid arthritis? This was in response to this tweet a couple of days ago. Diet changed, exercise mandatory, working on her sleep schedule. I believe HPV vaccine, or the C shot, the COVID shot, which was mandatory by school systems. Could it be those things? So my response was, it could be a superficial enabler. Those things could be superficial enablers of the illness, but there is usually a deeper cause that is using ingredients, so to say, from within the physical world to create the expression of disease, which has a deeper meaning for the person suffering it. Uncovering the deepest root cause or causes is the most effective way of healing not only the current manifestation of the illness, but any future manifestations of the same message, which will pop up even if the current illness is quote unquote cured, by eliminating the ingredients like toxins, viruses, dietary issues, etc., that were used to manifest it. Somebody replied to that, awake not woke. The feeling that cannot find its expression in tears will cause other organs to weep. Not sure who actually said it first, but I learned it from Marissa Peer. This is great. I like that. I'm going to retweet it. Some people aren't buying it, but I don't think they properly understand what is being talked about. But I'm open to constructive feedback. All right, so there are obviously a whole lot of other things that could be said about somebody who has rheumatoid arthritis at 20. It's an autoimmune disease. They probably have leaky gut, almost certainly. And obviously, and yes, for sure, shots can cause leaky gut, can cause rheumatoid arthritis, or other autoimmune diseases. And that may be the primary kind of like factor involved. And yet it had to add fuel to some sort of fire, right? In most people, if everything else was in perfect shape, taking the COVID shot may not have caused anything to happen, or it may have caused leaky gut, but no expression of disease from it. And it would have just healed up in 6 to 12 months. They would have been fine. Like their body would have been resilient enough to deal with the COVID shot. In sync with each other to manifest the disease. And sure, you can just see the physical, the material world, and say, okay, that's what's causing my rheumatoid arthritis. But I think what I'm trying to say is that if you miss the spiritual, emotional, philosophical, kind of a weird way of describing it, but you're your understanding of the nature of reality, if you miss those realms, those aspects of your being, the energetic level, also the subconscious mind, the emotional level. So if you miss these levels, these aspects of being, when you're trying to fix rheumatoid arthritis, if you only focus on the physical, you may remove the manifestation at that time, but you're not addressing the underlying reason why God chose to express that in your life or in your body, because you're missing part of the reasons, right? The other deeper reasons, the higher planes of your existence. And so the same message may or probably will be manifested later on in some way, because it's trying to push you in a certain direction. And it's not just a physical direction. There's a direction of spiritual growth, which is the whole point of human beings being on this planet. It's not just to make money and, have fun and have some kids and, have some pleasure and, and suffer and then die. The point is to grow spiritually, to undergo a spiritual process or a spiritual journey or transformation. So a spiritual journey means that you transform yourself, you become something different. And if you're not doing that, God is going to keep trying to push you in that direction, because that's why you're here. That's why He created you. And so you will keep getting messages trying to tell you that, like, hey, there are these underlying relationship issues, emotional issues, spiritual deficiencies, whatever, that I want you to work on so that you know, move up, and then once you deal with those, you'll uncover more subtle things that you have to deal with. And then once you deal with those, you'll uncover even more subtle things that you have to deal with. And it's just a continual process that only ends, at least on this plane, with your death. All right. So anyway, a little bit philosophical there. All right. Somebody on Facebook says, I love what you do, doctor, but I really, really can't get out of fight or flight. When I go into stores or when a stranger gets in my car, Uber, I get throat tightness and anxiety. How do I stop this? I've tried many supplements and IV therapies. Nothing works. So again, I mean, you can work on the physical level, and you may be able to fix this with something like a vagal nerve, stimulator, or like a vagal nerve procedure where they inject something into the vagal nerve. But there are other ways to address this. So mind-body medicine, like the lightning process, unlearnyourpain.com, the Curable app. And some of these resources focus more on pain than they do on anxiety or other things, but you just have to replace the word pain in those resources with whatever your problem is, right? Whatever you perceive your problem to be, whatever name you've given it. Anxiety, fight or flight response, my nervous system is, overwrought or whatever. Because the techniques and the insights and everything, the exercises they give you apply to every disease. And if they say they don't, then don't believe them. They do. So at least you can work on the mind, body, emotional aspect of things. At the same time, it's really important just believe that it's possible, and to deepen that belief continually, and not deepen the opposite belief, which is that I'm never going to get better because everyone's carrying around and shedding the spike protein. There's all these different thoughts you can come up with, and all these different fear-based rabbit holes you can go down, all these papers you can read about what the spike is doing to my nervous system and everything, right? You can't read that stuff, right? You have to read things that will support your healing and give you an underlying belief that it's possible and easy and will happen, and I'm not going to be affected by whatever people are shedding on me or anything like that. So there are two paths you can take, right? Two paths diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, right? You got to take the less traveled path. Most people go down the fear path, right? That's why fear is viral online. If I post something scary, it goes viral. If I post something positive, it like falls flat on its face. No one spreads it, right? So this is the less traveled path, and this is the one that you have to take if you want true deep healing. You have to go down the positive thinking pathway. Well, absolutely, it could. It did a lot for me, personally speaking, and you just gotta see what it does for you. One person I spoke to recently, they had some peripheral nerve damage and in their feet, some arterial issues in their feet, and they had pain in their lower legs for like 2 days after a cold plunge, and it wasn't even that cold. But they were sitting in cold water for 5 minutes, so they were just overdoing it. So you gotta titrate things to yourself and start low and then work your way up. And so this fight or flight thing, like the underlying physical causes, the physical level of the causes, sure, there could be spike protein, there could be some sort of chronic infection, mold, there could be Lyme. I mean, all these different things that are being used by your body and yourself, your mind, your heart, your spirit to manifest this fight or flight issue. And a lot of it is probably just fear porn, right? Just indulging in fear porn and reading and listening to the wrong things and getting more and more deeply scared. It's not so much, I mean, it's also superficial, but deeper levels, like it's like voodoo, basically. The way voodoo used to be presented when I was growing up in movies and stuff, it was like if you it only works on you if you believe it, right? So it's kind of the same with this, that people are doing voodoo on themselves because they're starting to believe something, deeper at a deeper and deeper level. They're becoming more and more convinced of the danger that they're in, and so they are, in a way, manifesting that illness themselves and not allowing their body to heal from it, just because of these deep-seated fears that they are developing further and further every day, and they're becoming more and more entrenched in their minds and hearts. So you have to go in the opposite direction and only expose yourself to positive things, positive messages, um, stories of people who have healed from your problem as well as other problems that are very similar to your problem. And so that's the work of basically mind body medicine. That's what they try to help you get convinced of and a big part of it is just reading and learning about the fact that the way that the mind can create illness and make it worse and not allow it to get better. So hopefully that's helpful. I mean, there's a lot of tools you can use, obviously, breath work. What I found personally more beneficial for anxiety than deep breathing, right? Instead of trying to get more oxygen, you try to limit your oxygen and build up carbon dioxide in your body. So you can actually buy tanks of carbon dioxide and like sip on those. That may be helpful. But you can also just do pranayama type of breath work and qigong type of breath work where you slow your rate of breathing, breathe less. And you can look at Buteyko breathing to learn how to do this. At least one of a few of the methods of doing that, of breathing less. That's oftentimes, in my experience, way more beneficial than trying to do some sort of deep breathing exercise for anxiety. In my experience, it makes things worse. So you actually need to do the opposite and take in less oxygen and build up more carbon dioxide. And you work on it over a period of time. What else? Just the biggest part of it, I think, honestly, is the fear that's in your own mind and the own underlying beliefs, again, about the nature of reality and health that have to be changed in order for you to allow space for yourself to heal. Okay, so let's see. Heather Bolts asked, I recently had a Cologuard test come out positive for blood and DNA. I restarted a plant-based diet and juicing. I'm 75. I've not had a colonoscopy for 11 years. In searching on YouTube how to beat cancer, I came across a holistic veterinarian who researched cancer in pets from PubMed. The reports were positive for ivermectin. She said it helps kill cancer cells in humans who have Epstein-Barr virus. Do I need ivermectin? So ivermectin is definitely one of the most powerful therapies for cancer. I've published a Substack on cancer. It's pinned to my Substack, which you can find at blog.mygotodoc.com, on one, for drug regimen for cancer, which is vitamin C, baking soda, which interestingly enough actually works by increasing oxygen and carbon dioxide both in your body. So there's this reaction where the baking soda combines with hydrogen ions and it creates oxygen and carbon dioxide. So anyway, baking soda, vitamin C, ivermectin, and fenbendazole, or mebendazole, which is the human version of fenbendazole. So if you use the animal ivermectin, animal fenbendazole, you could actually create this whole protocol for your cat, or maybe not your cat. I think cats have an issue with ivermectin. But anyway, any animal that could tolerate ivermectin and fenbendazole, you could do this protocol on them at home with the animal meds, which are designed for mammals who have mammalian digestive tracts, which includes humans. So that's a great superficial kind of like material world approach to cancer. but cancer has deeper causes for sure. Um, and and you may, yeah, I don't know what the if the DNA was a very specific marker for colon cancer or not, but it may have been. You can have false positives, and when you get a false positive, you can become so afraid that it actually creates the problem itself. So I would take some of these things with a grain of salt, and not become afraid, and not get to the point where you're actually worsening the problem. So you really got to focus on placebo and nocebo effects, especially from the physicians. They come mostly from physicians, these nocebo effects, unfortunately. And so I would recommend that you avoid, if you can, as much as possible, physicians. And if you can't, then every time they say something negative, you have to be watching for it and just say to yourself, you don't know me. You do not know me. You don't know me. Right. So you stress different parts of that sentence. Say it a few times to yourself. And, um, because they really don't know you specifically. All they know is studies of patients, with 1,000 people and the results on those, particular other people, right? They don't know what's actually, they don't have a deep understanding of your genetics and your history and your biochemistry and how you're going to respond to this particular issue. And so, um, you know, anyway, there's some good books. Healing Beyond Pills and Potions is a great book for understanding the way your subconscious and conscious can create disease using nocebo effects and heal them using placebo effects, as well as just other approaches. So you should have a comprehensive approach, as I often say about COVID and long haul and vaccine injury. You should have a comprehensive approach to treating anything that pops up, or any sign that there might be a problem. You want to address the underlying issues. So a lot of people, issues begin in the gut at a very young age. And so you need to go back to your childhood and see, was there any trauma? Was there any emotional issue that manifested with some sort of like IBS or whatever? And what was that led to that? What are the underlying issues? Not just physical issues, but emotional, spiritual, mental, whatever, subconscious, relationship issues, right? So if you really want to address the underlying problem and move on to a higher level of existence and start dealing with the more subtle issues that you need to deal with, and grow as a human being while fixing this problem, whatever it is in your gut, then you're going to have to clean things up. You're going to have to take an inventory, a deep inventory, and do a spring cleaning and just address all the different issues that all of us have, right? So we all have relationship problems and emotional, issues that we've been dealing with and for our whole lives. And it's high time that we just take care of them, you know, stop putting it off, or stop minimizing them, or stop, telling yourself that, oh, it's not a big deal, I'm better than other people, whatever it is that you're saying to yourself, or it's really not my fault, it's his fault, or her fault, right? Like that jerk, whatever. Um, because again, I mean, I can only speak from my own belief about the nature of reality. God is the one in charge of all these other causes and effects in the universe that are affecting you, right? So if he doesn't want somebody to hurt you, it's not going to happen. So, and he only wants what's best for you. So if somebody hurts you in some way, Uh, Thanks, guys. I'm back. Can you guys tell me where I dropped off? I was basically trying to talk about deeper levels of healing, but I'm not sure where I got cut off. So um, I think we were talking about cancer and trying to address it in a comprehensive way. So could you guys tell me what the last thing I said was? So how to repair the circadian rhythm seems to be the next question. If no one can tell me where I got cut off, I'll just jump to that. So the circadian rhythm is really important for healing, and it's dependent on signals that you get from your environment and things that you do and things that you think, and when how you choose to structure your day will affect your circadian rhythm. And the sicker you are, probably the more harmful your circadian rhythm. Oh, okay. So so a couple of people reminding me where I was. So if God doesn't want somebody to hurt you, they're not going to hurt you. So if God doesn't want something bad, quote unquote, bad to happen to you, it won't happen. That's what I was trying to say. And so everything that happens to you throughout your life was God's choice, and God only wants what's best for people. So it may look as though things are negative, things happening during somebody's life are negative, and they're not, right? From God's perspective, they're not. From the intermediary's perspective, they could be, right? So somebody could be committing a sin against you, and yet they would not have been allowed to do it unless God wanted that to happen to you specifically. So if you look at things from your perspective and from God's perspective, these are the two perspectives that really matter for you, so that you stop seeing the causal agents, right, around you, the intermediate causal agents. Instead, you see the primary cause, right, which is what God wants to happen to you. That shift of perspective, like philosophical understanding of the nature of reality, can have a profound impact on your health, your ability to heal, right? Because it can defuse what you perceive to be trauma, right? So you may or may not believe this, right? So people who do believe this, they are generally healthier. So this we've proven time and again from a lot of studies that people who have a religious or some sort of faith belief in a higher power are going to be healthier. And this is one of the reasons that they don't get so hung up on the things that have happened to them, because they have a belief in the next world where everything will be, they'll be rewarded, or punished, but if something bad happened here, it's going to be taken care of on the day of judgment. It's all going to be sorted out. And if somebody did them wrong, and it's going to be, they're going to be negatively affected by that. If not in this life, at least in the next life. And the person who was wronged will be, benefited by that wrong. So it can, if you understand this nature of reality, you will probably find that everything was beneficial even here in this life before the next life came, when it becomes far more beneficial, right? Just the impact of it is far greater in the next world than this one, but the seeds of that impact are felt here. So if people examine their lives in enough detail and look back on them, they'll usually be able to see how a lot of the things they thought were negative actually ended up being very positive. And it might have taken a decade for that positive effect to manifest itself, right? So maybe you really wanted to go to a certain college and you didn't get in, and you ended up going to some other college, but that's where you met the person that you were going to marry, and that's why you have the kids that you have, and etc., right? And you'd be like, well, I wouldn't have traded this for going to Harvard or whatever, right? So um, everything that you can see that was really what you thought was really bad, um, if you have enough insight, you can usually see how it was actually for your good and for your benefit. Even the things that seemed to be really, really bad in childhood, you would not have become the person that you are without them. And you won't be able to reach your ultimate end without those specific things having happened to you. And they're very specific to you, right? So other people are different than you, and God chose something different for them to happen to them so that he could, help to develop them into the thing that he wanted them to be. So anyway, I guess, so the point here was, dealing with cancer oftentimes requires dealing with relationship issues and deep-seated childhood, quote unquote traumas. And you can speak to your childhood self, you can kind of comfort them, because the child doesn't understand this, right? Almost no children understand this particular point, that the thing that seems to be harmful is actually beneficial. And their relationship with their parents is like this as well, the same way our relationship with God is, where the parents oftentimes understand a lot more about what's beneficial and harmful than a child does, and the child sees things as being negative, whereas the parents know that this is for that child's benefit, whatever it is. So God is even more aware of our benefit than a parent is of a child's benefit, and we may be even far more unaware of what is beneficial or harmful to us than what a child is aware of in regards to their parents. So anyway, you have to, if you want to address the problems that you have at the deepest levels, then that will be the most successful way of curing them, not just the current manifestation of illness, but any future ones. And then you can deal with, again, like I said, more subtle issues in your life instead of these grosser issues. Starting a plant-based diet too, yeah, that can be very helpful for cancer. So with cancer, the one person that I've seen have the most success with cancer patients all over the world is Hakeem Shabazz. It's really like miraculous. We are starting a consult service with him at mygotodoc.com/Hakim, Hakim. The website's still in development, so it might be a little bit buggy. I'm not sure if the consult scheduling thing has been fixed or not, but anyway, it's going to be there. And his the physical starting point for most of his cancer patients, again, he tries to address all these different levels, but the physical protocols oftentimes, again, these are all specific to specific people, oftentimes will include like certain vegetables that you're allowed to eat, vegetable juicing, green vegetable juicing, and something like sardines for your protein, possibly, and sometimes maybe not, but it's if you don't include the protein, then it ends up being a very like a modified fast, like a structured water fast. So you're getting structured water from the vegetables essentially, and not much else. You're not getting a lot of calories from those vegetables. The types of vegetables, the non-starchy vegetables that oftentimes he's recommending. All right, so yeah, somebody said, I believe in God's protection. So yeah, I'm not sure what they meant, but my point was that God is protecting you even when it seems like something negative is happening. He's always trying to benefit you by everything that happens in the world and in your life. And he's in charge of everything. So that's it kind of depends on your definition of God, right? So it's not like a little g God, it's like a big G God who is in control of every atom of existence and every person in existence, and is in charge of everything that happens to a human being, and within them and without them. So that kind of God, if you believe in that kind of God, then and you also believe in a beneficent or merciful, loving God, then this would make sense, what I'm saying, versus a vengeful or hateful or some other sort of quote unquote God, which is clear in my mind that is not the kind of God that is in charge. Chris says, Lumley says, still experiencing fatigue after titrating up ivermectin, taking hydroxychloroquine, LDN, and most of the mygo2 supplements for 9 months. What should be next to deactivate Epstein-Barr virus antibodies? I'm tired of being tired. So being tired, again, you have to ask, like, what's the underlying reason beyond? So what I'm saying is, let's get past COVID and spike protein and go deeper than that, right? Yes, that is one of the intermediary causes of fatigue for sure. And, you could say the same for microclots. You could say the same for like vascular shunts, where your muscles aren't taking up oxygen properly from the arterial blood, and then your venous blood has higher levels of oxygen, which you can test for. So all of these things are in intermediate, physical causes. Usually there's something deeper. It's usually that people have been overdoing it. They've been overstressing themselves for their whole life, right? They've been burning the candle at both ends, right? So, which basically means light is a problem, right? You're sending your body the signal that the days are like much longer than they should be, right? And it's like an endless summer with winter never comes, right? So in the winter, the nights are long, the days are short. But with modern technology, modern lighting, we're able to have the days the same length throughout the year, right? Quote unquote days, right? The light that we're exposed to. So that is extremely harmful to your sleep. It raises cortisol, which is, it creates a stress on you, raises cortisol, lowers melatonin, worsens your sleep, your ability to recover and heal. So we're aging ourselves very rapidly. So we're probably aging ourselves twice as fast as we should be, from our childhood onwards. You have to address those underlying, root issues, all the different stressors, that, the spike protein. You got to really think of it as the straw that broke the camel's back, not as all the straws. All right, it's not the only thing. There are a lot of other things that made it possible for it to affect you as it did. So you have to address all of those, which means comprehensive, right? Protocol, not just taking supplements. So supplements will address pieces of the problem, and the longer you're on them, the more kind of imbalances can be created. So you taking vitamin D for years can cause some issues, because low vitamin D, suboptimal vitamin D, can't be fixed by just taking vitamin D. It's really a sunlight deficiency. It has to be fixed by taking sunlight, pure unadulterated sunlight that's not blocked by window. It's not filtered by window glass. It's, via exposure to UVB. And it can't just be fixed by food either, right? So you just can't get that much vitamin D from fish, so it's a sunlight deficiency. So there's these signs that have meanings, and they have to be addressed based on what the meaning actually is, not based on some like flawed understanding of that. So yes, higher vitamin D is really beneficial for fixing problems like fatigue and cancer and diabetes and all kinds of things, or preventing them at least. But giving vitamin D doesn't fix those things, and we've seen this in studies. It's because the high vitamin D in those patients who have lower rates of cancer and dementia and whatever, and lower rates of autoimmune disease, et cetera, they're just generally a lot healthier. Those lower rates are because they get more sun than people with less vitamin D, on average, right? It's not because and the effect would be even stronger if you selected out the people who have high vitamin D due to supplementing vitamin D. So how do you address fatigue? So what does fatigue mean, generally speaking? Probably for most people, again, it means that you've been under too much stress for too long. And the manifestation of it, the superficial manifestation that finally triggers it, could be EBV, could be CMV, could be, spike protein toxicity, whatever. Lyme disease, even, Lyme co-infections, all these things could be there. Adrenal axis dysfunction, hypothyroidism, right? All these things can cause fatigue. Even like heart disease can cause fatigue. But the final kind of nexus for creating the manifestation is not the true reason that it's there, right? So yes, you can kill EBV. You can take Valtrex to kill EBV, and probably most people with EBV-induced chronic fatigue will feel a lot better, if not completely better, physically speaking, after 3 to 4 months of Valtrex or acyclovir, 4 or 5 times a day. It does have side effects that could cause problems for some people. You could take other things. You could take herbal antivirals, but Valtrex is, relatively successful for people. But again, you're like applying a superficial solution to a deeper problem, and you're not addressing why you end up Hey guys, so I don't know what it is. I thought I was solving the problem by not going outside. Apparently there's these signal blockers that people use, diplomats and stuff in this capital city. But I am right behind the U.S. Embassy. Maybe I'm having the same problem here. But anyway, it's less of a problem than it was before, but I need to work on my internet. So, sorry about that. The last thing I was saying, again, if somebody could remind me or tell me exactly where I was talking about fatigue. Yeah, I mean, that's a big section. I'm not sure where I stopped talking about fatigue. So basically what I was trying to explain was if you get to the underlying issues, you'll solve the problem in a more complete way, and it won't re-express itself. So what I've seen is that if you address an intermediary cause, you'll feel like you'll have an intermediate solution. You may feel that you're completely better for a period of time, or you may not feel completely better. So you may completely address EBV or Lyme disease and you still don't feel like there's energy. And it's like, what else is there? And you keep knocking out physical problems that you've found that could be causing the fatigue. But they're not the ultimate cause, right? So they are, again, intermediate causes, and they're contributing to your subconscious or your whole being's ability to manifest fatigue, but they're not the true reason why you're fatigued. And so if you knock out those legs of the stool will just keep floating in the air, even if you knock them all out, because your inner being, yourself finds another way to express the same message to you that, hey, slow down. I'm trying to hit the brakes for you. I'm trying to stop you from stressing yourself out so much, from doing so much. And it's not just like that you're a workaholic, right? It's the point is that there's too much stress in general on your body that you need to address. So if you solve the EBV, sometimes that solves the fatigue for a period of time, and then sometimes it comes back. So I've seen this a lot where somebody had hypothyroidism, for example, and they take thyroid hormone without addressing the underlying reason why their body's trying to slam on the brakes. And they may feel better for a period of time, but then they become fatigued again and they develop similar problems again, or they never go away. So they could go away for a period of time, or they don't go away. And then they have then they're diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, and supposedly the thyroid has been addressed. The thyroid level is normal. And yeah, some people will go a little further and they go to a functional medicine doctor, and they'll get like a natural version of thyroid, and they'll add, which has some T3 in it, and then that'll solve their problem for a period of time. And yet they haven't addressed the underlying issue, and so either it comes back stronger, or it morphs into something else, right, to try to express the same message. And it may not be fatigue anymore. It may be cancer. It may be heart disease. It may be something else, right? So anyway, as I have turned off lights at night, I can no longer stand lights on or television at night. Yeah, this is what you realize. It's kind of like the same disruption that happens to children who have been eating stuff chock full of like artificial flavors and vegetable oils and all kinds of junk. They think that stuff tastes good. Like they think McDonald's tastes good. And then if you fix your palate, right? If you clean it up, if you clean up what you put into your mouth for like a couple of years, and then you go back and try to eat that stuff, you're like, ugh, this doesn't taste good at all. This is disgusting. This tastes like cardboard. It is just gross. It's the same with light. I'm at the point where, you know, some people that I'm around, when I visit their homes, the light is so bright. Even the blue blockers aren't enough. I mean, I need like add another layer on top, which is like dark sunglasses. I mean, it's just very, very difficult. It's like a shock. It's like a physical, like assault on you when somebody, especially if somebody turns on the light when you've gotten used to the dark and you're not used to lights at night, and somebody flips on a light switch. It's just like getting punched in the face. It's crazy. So people have lost their sensitivity to this. They don't realize that it is like a punch in the face. It's like stimulating cortisol. It's stimulating a lot of stress and not allowing melatonin to go up. So, but yes, it's very harsh. It's very, very harsh, and we've become numbed to it. And I highly recommend everyone now, don't use artificial lighting, especially at dark. I mean, it's just like absolutely not after dark. Even during the day, it's stressful. I mean, I have to use it right now because I tried to do this outside. It didn't work. I kept dropping. Now I'm dropping inside too, but I'll probably have to go find like a studio or some sort of office space that has better internet. So somebody says, and Debbie says, I just joined. If this is a repeat, what about POTS and autonomic dysfunction with fatigue? Yeah, I mean, the same thing applies regardless of what the illness is. You got to approach it in a comprehensive way and understand the reasons that it's manifested in you. It's not just about POTS and autonomic dysfunction with fatigue as like a standalone issue, and the solution is the same for everyone who has that issue. The solution is going to be probably mostly the same, but very different also for each specific person who's affected by it, because the underlying deeper reasons for it are going to be different in different people. But yeah, the general points about fatigue are the same. And, that your body's probably trying to hit the brakes. And if you just address the intermediate causes of that fatigue, like Epstein-Barr, Lyme, co-infections, spike protein, COVID, HPA axis dysfunction, hypothyroidism, by just giving intermediate solutions, right? Like killing something or supplementing something that is low, giving somebody testosterone or thyroid hormone or whatever, or estrogen or progesterone or et cetera, right? Even if it's the most natural version of that thing, yeah, that's better than a less natural version, than a completely artificial version. It's better than, some of the other very mainstream medical approaches, but it's not good enough to really solve the underlying problem. So you will either continue to have the underlying problem, or it will come back, or you'll have some other problem that's trying to express to you the same thing, right? Because the causes have not been deeply addressed. The cause of somebody's low testosterone, right? Like that's not the root cause of their illness manifestation. Why is the testosterone low, right? So giving bioidentical testosterone or thyroid or whatever, estrogen and progesterone, is not getting to the root cause of the issue, right? It's halfway there, right? But again, it's the same approach as modern medicine, like what I started with in this live stream, explaining that if you try to fix high blood pressure by just forcefully lowering the blood pressure, it's the same way as trying to fix hypothyroidism by forcefully increasing the thyroid hormone. There will be feedback effects because it hasn't addressed the underlying cause of why the thyroid is not creating enough thyroid hormone, why the body is raising the blood pressure. I mean, it's the same, right? For any illness, we can replace any illness with this if we go to intermediate solutions, either supplements, this popped up a lot in the replies to that tweet. It was like, yeah, I solved my blood pressure by taking garlic, and I solved my blood pressure by taking this and that, and I solved my blood pressure by exercising like a maniac, 7 times a week and for 7 hours a day and whatever, right? Like I solved my diabetes by, fasting for 21 days, going on a 21-day water fast, every 6 months. All of these are the same kind of Band-Aid approach. Like,
Some of them are better band-aids than others. Yeah, I mean, it's great that you're not having to take metformin every day for the rest of your life if you can just fast for 3 weeks straight and get rid of your diabetes and do that every couple of years. But that is not a natural, balanced approach to health. That is a pretty extreme form of an intervention of fasting, right? So it's not good for you. It's great. It's solving the diabetes, but it's applying undue stress to your body in order to cover up the diabetes. But the diabetes is just one sign of a systemic problem. Systemic means the problem's everywhere in every organ. So the damage is being expressed by diabetes, and the insults, the causes, the underlying root causes, your emotional issues, relationship issues, environmental issues, all of these things are are applying stress to the entire person. And the weakest link is breaking first, in that person, whatever it is. Their blood pressure goes up, their diabetes, manifests, whatever. But the same stress is everywhere. If you just solve the diabetes or just solve the thyroid or just solve the EBV or just solve the Lyme and don't solve why your body, like the terrain approach to thinking about this, if you don't solve the underlying terrain issue, then some other thing will break or the initial thing will come back. The initial illness or symptom will come back, even though the illness might be called something else. So like fatigue could jump from low thyroid to HPA axis dysfunction to Lyme disease to EBV. Like as you knock out each of those legs, the fatigue remains because you're not actually, it's just finding some other way to manifest itself. So hopefully that's clear. I mean, I talk a lot about, I try to focus on deeper, comprehensive approaches, including mind body medicine and other things. But people just want to like tell me, or just want me to tell them what supplement to take, what medication to take, how do I get rid of the spike protein from my body. I mean, that's fine. And as far as it goes, some people are not going to go beyond that. But if you do want to go beyond that, if you want to really fix your problems and not have new ones pop up in the future like whack-a-mole, then you need to go a lot deeper. Irish says, I need to address my entire lifestyle. I've gotten overweight and depressed. My diet is terrible. As I've gained weight, anxiety has really hit me. I need to do your entire Phoenix protocol. Yeah. So the Phoenix protocol is as comprehensive as I could get at the time. Although parts of what I wrote and parts of what I focused on, I mean, it's just people are less interested in it. And, it, anyway, it's probably even more than that, right? You do have to address, I don't remember everything that I wrote in there, but yeah, I mean, you have to go and address all your relationships, right? All your anger and all your negative emotions, right? Why are they there? You need to address, like, is it rational for me to be angry at this person? If I believe that God does everything and it's all for my benefit, is it even rational for me to be angry at this person, right? When that person was created for the purpose of benefiting me, even though from their perspective it was, a sin. From my perspective, it should be a benefit, and I should see it that way. Instead of seeing the intermediaries, I should see the ultimate cause, which is God. So, so yeah, comprehensive means different things to different people, but you really gotta dig deep if you want to solve these things in a really profound and robust way. So yeah, so you need to address different aspects of yourself. So lack of motivation is a big one for a lot of people, and probably it sounds silly and ridiculous, but the best way to get moving, to become motivated, is to get moving and get motivated. I mean, it sounds silly, it doesn't make any sense, but like you start small with a baby step and just start doing one thing different, on this journey towards health, and then a snowball effect happens, and you start to become motivated, not just in those areas but in all the areas of your life. So you have to start with a little seed of motivation. You have to finally decide, and there's ways of triggering that final decision to get moving and get started. You read about things, you expose yourself to other people who are doing it, you're around other people who are on the same journey. That helps, right? So as they used to say in Sufi circles, like if you're trying to go to Baghdad, you join a caravan that's going to Baghdad. You don't go yourself. So it made sense to people back to travel anywhere by yourself, but the same thing applies nowadays. if you want to go to Paris, you get on a plane of people going to Paris, right? You don't try to swim across the ocean. So, so anyway, the point of that aphorism or whatever is that it has a deeper meaning, that like when you're around other people, there's this like almost this osmosis that happens. So like if you're around a bunch of motivated people all the time, you will eventually become motivated. It'll just rub off on you, right? So if you're around a bunch of people who are acting healthy, being healthy, super motivated, that will usually rub off on you after a period of time if you avoid all the other things that are dragging you down. So there's some deeper changes that people often let go of these old bad friendships that are just harming them. Some of the relationships do need to just go. Other ones, like family relationships, usually need to be fixed, right? So you can't divorce your family, and even if you can, it's not going to be helpful for you to do that. So you need to fix the problem. I mean, this gets into specific details of every situation is different, but you need to talk to some. So again, guys, it's this is really annoying for me. I thought it was going to be solved by being inside and connected to a stable internet connection. But anyway, we will try a like an office space or something in this city next time, like a conference room that should have even better internet. So anyway, allergies in Austin. How do you approach an otherwise healthy 11-year-old? Standard testing drops. So I'm not sure where I got cut off. I'm just going to rewind and say that there's a misunderstanding people have that, oh, I'm super healthy, I've always been super healthy, except I have allergies, right? Okay, the allergies again are the tip of the iceberg. Everything else is below the surface, and if you don't address the allergies, what usually happens is that the older you get, other things start to pop up, other issues start to manifest themselves, other problems, because it's the causes are they're just being manifested in this weak link, right? As allergies, that's your weak link, that's your what you're most susceptible to. But there are other things you're susceptible to, but you're a little less susceptible to them, and there's other things you're a little bit less susceptible to. And eventually, if the same causes create this weight on you for long enough, those things that you're less and less and less susceptible to will eventually become manifest as well, if that chronic stress continues long enough. So is it leaky gut? Is it toxins that you've been exposed to? So you have to detox at every level, right? So you have to detox physically, emotionally, mentally, subconsciously, whatever. You got to get rid of negative thought patterns, negative emotions, negative beliefs, right, about the nature of reality, right? And allergies. Like allergies are incurable, right? You got to detox from that belief. You got to jettison that belief, right? Otherwise, it will be very difficult to fix something if you have a deeply held belief that it can never be fixed. It's like, again, it's like voodoo that you've done on yourself. You've allowed yourself to become convinced by the modern medical system that certain things are incurable and that you just have to deal with them, or there's only certain ways to deal with them. You have to take allergy drops, you have to do this and that, and even then it doesn't work all the time, and whatever. You got to jettison all those incorrect beliefs in order to really be able to get better. So detox, and then you have to focus on nutrition. And again, nutrition at every level, nutrition at the emotional level, like you need intimacy in your life. And most people in the US or in a lot of Western countries just think it's unnecessary. I'm just going to like be on my own. I'm not going to have any close relationships with people. It's not a problem for everyone, but for some people, it's a big problem. And for some people, it's the primary problem, right? So heart disease is a serious cause of mortality, and it's a serious cause of death and morbidity, which is like dysfunction and symptoms. And yet, for some people, the primary cause of their heart disease, like they would not have heart disease if not for this, is lack of emotional intimacy, family, friendship, relationships. And this was proven, right? There was a study in, maybe it was Connecticut, anywhere, somewhere in the Northeast. Harvard went there, whole town of people who had half the incidence of heart disease as the rest of the country. I might be getting details a little bit off, like the numbers a little bit off, because it's been a long time. I've kept repeating this study so many times. I may have. Anyway, the general gist of it is correct. So there was nothing different about them, which was what made them such a conundrum. They were fat, they drank too much, they smoked too much, they were overstressed, overworked, bad food, bad water, bad air, bad everything, right? Bad genes, nothing good, right, going for them to explain why they had half the rate of heart disease. And the only difference was these really strong, on average in that community, really strong friendship ties and family ties. So for half the people you would have expected to have heart disease in that community, they had no heart disease just because of this one thing, which seems like not a big deal, right? If I write you a lifestyle prescription and that's one of like 49 things on there, you'd be like, I can skip that one. It's not a big deal. I don't have to like find somebody to be intimate with. I'm not talking about physically just, right? Sometimes physically is a doorway to emotional intimacy, but real emotional intimacy, sometimes it's actually a barrier. But anyway, real emotional intimacy with friends and family and with all the people in your life, like whatever level of intimacy is like natural for that relationship should be there, right? I'm not saying like, have an undue level of intimacy with like the barista at Starbucks, but most people have, less intimacy with the barista at Starbucks than they should have. If they see that person every day, they have less intimacy with their neighbors than they should have when they're living there for decades or even years or even months, right? Like get to know your neighbors. Like go and ask after them, ask how are you doing, get to know them a little bit, ask about their lives, ask about their problems, see if you can help them. So anyway, just becoming more human is going to be very helpful for a lot of people. Yeah. So what I'm talking about is nutrition at every level. So physical level, obviously, you may need to eliminate certain foods that are inflammatory for now, certain high histamine foods for now, not forever, but for now, an elimination diet. You may need to, a kid may not need to do this, but they may need to, have a little more exercise, get a lot of sun. That's another nutrient, a physical nutrient. And like I was saying, thoughts can be either toxins or nutritious for your health in general, right? So if you have positive thoughts, if you're feeling gratitude and positive emotions, these are nutritive, right? And if you are thinking the right things about the nature of reality, that is also going to benefit your health. It's going to act as kind of a quote unquote nutrient, etc. So you have to, these are the two causes of disease, right? The two umbrella causes, toxins and like too many toxins and lack of nutrients. But you have to understand those things in their broadest possible senses. So toxins and nutrients. If you remove toxins at every level of your being and you add all the nutrients that your being expects, then eventually you'll be healthy and you'll have addressed it at the deepest levels. And there's oftentimes some sort of emotional issues that need to be addressed in somebody who has an illness. And so just looking at the pollen, right? That's a superficial intermediate cause, very, very superficial cause. Sure. Yeah, you're reacting to pollen and your body's releasing histamine, but why? Right? Other people are exposed to the pollen and they don't release histamine. Other people are exposed to strawberries and they don't have a huge histamine reaction, and they don't get a runny nose, they don't get headaches. There's a lot of manifestations of allergies that can come later on, like headaches and fatigue and brain fog and all these other things, if you don't address the initial manifestations of like runny nose and stuffy nose. It can be, in part due to facial and jaw structure, right? That can predispose to allergies. But again, that's like an intermediate physical cause. You can also not have allergies with the same bad facial jaw structure. So part of the solution could be, myofascial, practitioners that widen your jaw instead of just, accepting it. And, especially at 11, it may be possible to still do that. It could be a lot of things, right? There's a lot of intermediate causes that you could address and remove the manifestation of the problem short term, but long term, you should address it at every level. And so again, this is something that no one does. Okay. The only person I know who does this in detail is this friend of mine, Hakeem Shabazz Ahmed. Again, it's going to be mygotodoc.com/Hakeem, Hakim. If you want to have a comprehensive healing protocol to get to the real bottom of things. Why are we losing muscle similar to ALS, et cetera, but no test or blood work? So there could be a lot of reasons. I mean, without the context, I mean, I assume you're talking about like spikeopathies, perhaps. But yeah, so the intermediate issues obviously could be inflammatory, lack of, not taking up nutrients from the gut due to, gut dysfunction and inflammation, and just inflammation. So there are a lot of tests for spike dysfunction. Microclots could be interfering with nutrient delivery by just blocking the delivery of nutrients to microscopic, blood vessels, arterioles that are feeding the muscles. There's shunting of nutrients, including oxygen and other nutrients in a lot of people. So that will lead to losing muscle, because you're just not delivering the nutrients the muscle needs and you're not draining out the toxins. And so, again, it just comes back to toxins and nutrients for every illness, including this one. And not everyone will have this manifestation of it, but it's like a rapid aging, right? So with aging, there is muscle loss. And so rapid aging happens because of undue stress on your entire body and mind and heart and soul. So you need to address all the factors involved in that undue stress, including spike protein detox and microclots and et cetera. Loneliness is at epidemic proportions in the United States. Yes, that's a great point, and it's true. It's one of the reasons my fellow veterans have such a high suicide rate. Absolutely. So whatever you have to do to fix this, whether you have to join a 12-step group that applies to you, or join a church group, or join like a club or whatever, you make some adult friends. It's hard. It was easy when we were kids. We're all thrown together for, whatever, 8 hours a day or whatever it is in school. And forced to be around other people and forced to do things in groups and forced to eat somewhere and, at a table with a bunch of other people. And so we just had a lot of excuses to talk to other kids. So you got to find excuses to talk to other human beings around you, even if you're very, very, yourself is very opposed to that. Your personality is very, loner type of personality. It doesn't matter. Everyone needs that. And even if you think you don't, you probably need it more than people who think they do need it. So you have to give yourself excuses to develop intimacy with other people. You have to join some sort of club or whatever it takes, basically. And it can't just, a good place to start is with joining some sort of thing where you have an activity, or you go play golf, or you play racquetball or something or whatever. A lot of people are doing pickleball nowadays. But after that, it becomes an excuse to develop some intimacy. So you go and have a meal with them later. You talk to them. You get to know them. And in the beginning, it may feel artificial, and it's fine, right? You fake it till you make it, right? You just fake it until it becomes real. So if you have trouble knowing how to have a conversation, go and look up 1,001 questions to ask somebody at lunch, to trigger a lunch conversation. With your wife, you can go and look up the 36 questions to fall in love. And there's probably 1,001 more that you can find, but those 36 were chosen because they were the best at developing intimacy in strangers. Quote unquote, making people fall in love. So they start off less intimate and gradually become more and more intimate. So it's fantastic. It's a fantastic hack for going on a date and just getting to know somebody. So each of those questions could be answered in 30 seconds, or they could be answered in 30 minutes. So they can be the trigger for a proper conversation. They can be a conversation starter. So get conversation starters, get a list of them, and just start having some real conversations with the people in your life. Like a lot of people, they barely know the person that they're married to, or they barely know their own parents, or they barely know their own brothers and sisters since they've left home and gone their own ways. Like there's so much you don't know about the people around you, and really the the wonder and the complexity of life is missing from a lot of people's lives because they're not open to it anymore. So it's like you got to get down to like what it really means to be human, if you want to truly be healthy. So if you want to be a healthy human being, you have to understand what it means to be a human being. You're not just an eater, you're not just a useless eater. You're not just somebody who's going around consuming food and oxygen and, expelling carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. You are an emotional, spiritual being, and so you have thoughts. You need to address your thoughts, your emotions, your subconscious, your relationships with other people, especially your relationship to yourself, your relationship to God. All of these things are different aspects of yourself, your motivation, your plans, all of these things. You need to address them if you want to be healthy. So you can't be healthy in isolation. You can't just make the body healthy, because the body is deeply intertwined with all these other aspects of yourself. So if your thoughts are quote unquote unhealthy, if your emotions are quote unquote unhealthy, your body can't be healthy. It cannot, okay, be deeply healthy. So just addressing the physical level by taking a supplement, detoxing the physical stuff without detoxing the other levels, will never truly succeed. Have you heard of Dr. Jack Kruse? Yes, I have. And his work on sunlight and the body. He says to get rid of your sunglasses and let the sun hit your eyes and your skin. Yeah, absolutely. No sunglasses. I mean, the healthiest, most bulletproof immunity I've ever had, the healthiest I've ever felt, and the most bulletproof I've ever felt in terms of immunity is when I was spending the most time in the sun. So spend as much time as you can in the sun without the window glass. I mean, this is a big mistake people make, to think that they're exposed to sun when it's coming through window glass. You are not being exposed to real sunlight. You're filtering out the UV and the infrared ends of the spectrum, which is creating toxicity by concentrating blue light too much, or not concentrating. Hi, everyone. Sorry, but again, so yeah, I know Jack Kruse. Great work that he's doing. Take off the sunglasses, get out in the sun, direct sun, morning, afternoon, and late afternoon. So at least 30 minutes direct sun um, after sunrise until 10 a.m. But best to do it at sunrise. Watch the sunrise, get the direct sun for 30 minutes, and then 30 minutes in the early afternoon, 3 minutes, and it's best just before sunset, and actually watch the sunset. And then no lights after dark. Oh, I forgot, I missed some other things about the circadian rhythms that this applies to. So you have to eat early, right? A lot of people have started doing this intermittent fasting where they don't eat until like 4 p.m. or 2 p.m. or something. This is not good for your circadian rhythm. You need to eat early and a lot, right? Have a big breakfast, and then a smaller lunch, but still a significant lunch, and then no dinner if you want to do intermittent fasting, right? And if you do want to have dinner, at least stop at least 4 hours before bed. For most people, that'll be most beneficial for their circadian rhythm, but even earlier might be helpful for some people. And then you want to put like stressful conversations, more stressful things like exercise in the first half of the day. So I know some people like to, exercise fasting, in a fasted state, whatever. Listen, your circadian rhythm is more important than whatever little biohacking benefits you get from, some of the things that you're doing. So you eat early, within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up, get your sun early, do all your really stressful stuff. If you at night you're like, oh, I should tell my wife about this thing that I know is going to make her really upset and we're going to have a big argument and blah blah blah, don't tell her. Okay, wait until the morning, then tell her. Try to pick and choose your timings for your battles, right? You will have if it has to be a battle, it doesn't have to be a battle. First of all, don't let it be a battle, but second of all, if it does have to be a battle, choose the time. If you have to fire somebody, don't do it right before they're about to go to sleep. Do it in the morning or, in the first half of the day. So the first half of the day is for more stressful stuff. Second half of the day is for less stressful stuff. And especially the later it gets, less and less stressful, winding down time, after 4 p.m. or whatever it is, start to wind down. And so that you can go to sleep properly. That'll help 99% of sleep issues. Sursum Corda has a really great question. High calcium in recent lab work, any natural solutions? So again, you got to ask, why is the calcium high? And in the last 4 years, like half the people in the Western world have been taking really high doses of vitamin D. What does vitamin D do? It increases the uptake of calcium from your gut. And so some people may have high calcium because of that. So and then you got to think, okay, what would happen next, right? If I'm increasing vitamin D levels in a unnatural way, right? Just by like taking these mega doses, I'm not getting them from sunlight. And so I'm circumventing normal, um, you know, cause and effect in my body. So I'm doing it in an unnatural kind of like a pharmaceutical way. And I'm overwhelming perhaps my body's ability to compensate for it, right? Because I'm doing it unnaturally, right? Instead of just going and getting sun, which the real deficiency is sunlight deficiency, I'm going to take mega doses of oral vitamin D and circumvent my body's ability to do. So if you do things in a natural way, your body is able to uh, put on brakes so that if you're making vitamin D naturally and your body gets too much, then it has ways of stopping that, right? It can lower the amount of vitamin D that it makes, make less. It can make the optimal amount. If it gets the optimal signals and nutrients to make vitamin D, it will make the optimal amount of vitamin D for you, for your specific situation, versus there's no way of getting to optimal levels by, mega dosing with supplements or even regular dosing with supplements. You just have no feedback mechanisms, right, in place that you can check your parathyroid and that's helpful, but anyway, we'll get to that. So since you're doing it in an unnatural way, you're bypassing feedback mechanisms that your body could use to optimize the level for your specific situation, your specific time, your specific age, your specific location on earth, etc., your specific disease issues and whatever health issues. So you raise calcium. Now your calcium levels start to go up and your body will try to fix this problem with its feedback mechanisms, but they can become overwhelmed, is my point, when you're doing it unnaturally. So the body sees calcium levels rising, so it says, okay, we need to do something with this we need to lower the calcium levels back to normal, right? So this one signal, vitamin D, is going to raise the calcium levels, so we're going to release something else, parathyroid, calcitonin, other things to lower calcium levels. But eventually the body's ability to maintain calcium levels in the right place can become overwhelmed. So your blood calcium could go too high. You could develop hyperparathyroidism. You could develop calcium being deposited in the wrong places, right? So even if you're taking K2 at the same time, there's no way to perfectly balance when you're doing things in an unnatural way. Again, it's very difficult to perfectly balance the D and the K2. You just don't know exactly how much D and exactly how much K2 do I need. It's like you're basically trying to hack your own body and bypass its own innate super intelligence, right? So it's a super intelligent system that can't be recreated in any sort of model. So because it's irreducibly complex, it requires this much complexity to have this much super intelligence, So it requires every molecule that's in you to be able to respond to everything in your internal, external environment in order to create an output of disease or health, and to fine tune things along the way. So so anyway, eventually your blood calcium levels could go up. You may not be able to shunt those into the bones properly, and you may have issues with high calcium. So this is one of the reasons that calcium could go up, and you need to address that. Maybe you need to stop taking vitamin D and just go out in the sun and let the excess vitamin D kind of drain off, or it's something else. So it really requires asking what is the cause for you, and the solution is always addressing the cause. It's not taking something to try to fix the effect without addressing the cause, right? So yeah, you can do things. You can eat less calcium. You can, you can do other things. You can address other hormonal systems. You could raise calcitonin, to bring down calcium levels. But that's not addressing it in the right way, right? So you want to address it in the way that it's meant to be addressed in, which is by addressing the reasons that it's there. And that requires figuring out what the reasons are, obviously. And it could be, more than, it could be a lot of things. So again, manifestations of problems have some sort of meaning for you specifically, and I can't tell you what that is without a lot more information. Oscar Soto says, just started taking ivermectin and feel nausea and upset stomach and vision issues in the morning. Is that expected? Would it pass after some days? It can cause nausea. Upset stomach is less common, but it can cause that, and certainly vision issues. So assuming you really need ivermectin, then you can separate the doses. That usually resolves the issue, and the side effects are not particularly problematic for people when it's being used in the short term. So I would hesitate to recommend anyone take even the safest medication like ivermectin for very long periods of time for like the rest of their life. Again, you're not addressing the underlying root cause issue. You're using a Band-Aid solution even with ivermectin in a lot of cases if you're using it, chronically speaking. If you keep getting sick from COVID, there's a reason, and you need to fix that reason. And one of the most overwhelming ways to fix it is just to get a lot of sunlight throughout the day. And if you're not able to do that because of your job, your lifestyle, your workplace, whatever, have a midterm or longer term goal that you will be able to do that so that you can address underlying root causes robustly. All right, so let's see. Antonio CB Sammartino asked, should I be vaccinated with long COVID? No. Most of my symptoms improved. High blood pressure, tremors, vibrations, epigastric pain, bloating, anxiety, most of my joint pain, hyperglycemia, but new ones arrived. Mouth sores, tongue bumps, leukoplakia, and some stay the same. Back pain, lipoma, like masses under the skin, varicose veins. I'm unvaccinated and my COVID diagnosis was May 2023. Thank you. Yeah, so there is a lot of people will just find a natural disease course where some symptoms that are there in the beginning go away. I mean, I see this all the time. So the body is oftentimes eventually healing, and along the way, new issues can pop up. These are a little concerning. There could be some sort of autoimmune issue still there with the mouth sores and leukoplakia and stuff. And then some of the persistent things like back pain, the lipomas, varicose veins. I mean, these kind of things are obviously energetic blockages at the energy level of our being, and they are deeper. There's deeper reasons for them as well. So there are also emotional blockages that feed into the energetic, that create the energetic blockages, and there are other levels of our negative thoughts and beliefs and other things can also manifest as energetic blockages. So even going to like energy medicine level, right, with homeopathy or with acupuncture or herbs, is still not going to the deepest level. You're not just an energy being, right? You're also an emotional being and a spiritual being, and you're a thinking being and, a believing being, and all of these different things need to be addressed to address the problem holistically. Claude says, is giving blood a good thing for someone who has long COVID for the last 20 months? I know giving plasma might be better, but it's way too far from where I live. Yeah, so giving blood can also be beneficial. You just can't do it as often. People are concerned about the quality of the blood supply, and that's just something you're going to have to figure out for yourself. I don't know that you're really, worsening the quality of blood supply, but you could make an argument that you could be harming somebody else directly by donating your blood. Um, you know, I've gone and given blood, and I started to feel sick and nauseated towards the end of the blood donation, and they just throw away the blood if you don't get an entire bag of blood. They just throw it away. They discard it, which I was so pissed off about. I was like, man, uh, that's some valuable stuff there. It came out of my arm, and now you're just gonna throw it away because it's not enough. It was almost enough, but yeah, I felt sick. I used to pass out when I gave blood until I started lying down while I gave. I mean, my mind was involved in this a lot. Like I would start imagining the blood draining out of me and start freaking out and stuff, and that would make me pass out. And the first time it happened, I actually ended up passing out in the gym in high school where there was a blood donation. I was standing in line waiting to give blood. I had never given blood before. And I started seeing people giving blood. And my overactive imagination started to imagine the blood draining out of me. And like my blood pressure dropped and I passed out. I fell straight backwards and my head bounced off the basketball court floor, that wooden floor in the gym. I mean, other people told me this. Obviously, I didn't. I was out cold. Um, but yeah, so if you have that kind of issue, you can donate your blood and then have it not given to anyone else. So it's basically like bloodletting, or you can just find a place that does bloodletting and get that done, or find a nurse, who's willing to drain the blood out of your arm and then toss it. So I don't know what to say. I mean, with plasma, somebody recently made this comment, I think on Facebook or sorry, Twitter or somewhere else. No, on my Substack, where I'd mentioned plasma donation for, shedding and for basically spike toxicity. So, with plasma, they try to clean it up and they try to create plasma products out of it, and they try to, concentrate certain things out of it and remove certain things. But our ability to do that is limited, right? So we may not be able to completely eliminate spike and, other toxins from somebody's plasma before giving it to somebody else. But again, so that may be mixed up with other stuff, but still it's like you have to ask yourself the question, like, even if it's making an insignificant negative, if a negative impact, but even if it's like insignificant tiny amount of impact, still that's wrong, right? It's like morally reprehensible to harm people even a little bit, right? But I don't know. I mean, you could also argue that people need the plasma, and they're, whether they know it or not, a lot of them don't know that there's harm, in the plasma because of all the stuff that's in it. Some people may know that, but at the end of the day, it's like, those people are going to get plasma from you or somebody else. Maybe there's some benefit that outweighs the risk. Every medical intervention has Sorry, guys. I think I got dropped off when I was talking about the moral implications of plasma donation and blood donation. So anyway, I do realize that it's a complicated moral question, and I'm not sure what I would. I mean, so far I haven't gone and donated plasma and blood, but I personally don't have a problem that I know of. Right? Like the question could be like, okay, if you're well, like you could still have a lot of spike protein in your plasma, you just don't know it. You could still have microclots in your blood and plasma and not know it. So do you need to go and check all those things before donating blood and plasma? Maybe yes, I don't know. So it's a complicated, kind of thorny moral issue of whether plasma donation is, because some people, do need blood, right? Um, and plasma products, just because they're stuck in a medical system that requires those kind of interventions. But sometimes, obviously people need blood and plasma just for an accident or something. So anyway, I can't solve those problems for you, but I can say that taking blood out of your body um, can be helpful. And just it takes a little longer than the plasma donation because you can't do it as often. Maria Claudia Rosero says, while taking ivermectin in high doses for long COVID and for long periods, is it good to check the liver enzymes and how to manage the ivermectin side effects like blurry vision, headaches while it's being taken? So I wouldn't take it for long periods. Well, for COVID, yeah, it's for long COVID, if that's the approach, is to take ivermectin as part of your protocol. It can be very helpful at eliminating the symptoms of long COVID. So that would be 3 to 6 months, and then you try to taper off. And you can check the liver enzymes every month or two. It's not super important because it's never been known to cause real liver damage despite rising liver enzymes, and there might be a small rise in liver enzymes. The side effects can be managed by decreasing the dose and addressing other, like for the headaches, addressing other of the straws on your back that are creating the headache, the allowing headaches to manifest, right? So ivermectin is the final straw that leads to the headaches, but it's not the only one. So usually speaking, so like low magnesium, which everyone has. So magnesium supplementation, other things, stress and stuff like that will decrease the headaches. But yeah, spreading out the doses can minimize the side effects. Levo says, is it okay to take colchicine long term? I don't think it's okay to take anything long term, but again, you have to balance the risks and benefits. Like this particular person in front of me, are they just not willing to address underlying root causes in their lifestyle and emotions and thoughts and subconscious mind and all of that? Is maybe colchicine will be better for them than not colchicine. Overall, it's possible you can make an argument either way. And metformin or fenbendazole as general prevention for cancer. Yeah, I wouldn't take things as just, let's take metformin and fenbendazole for the rest of my life to prevent cancer. Again, I think the approach is fundamentally flawed, just as flawed as trying to treat something with, acutely or chronically with like lowering your blood pressure, your high blood pressure, or your high blood sugar, or, trying to raise your thyroid in this superficial way with these superficial interventions. If the thing is trying to manifest based on the causes being there, that just adds fuel to the fire. The manifestation just gets stronger, and then it gets harder to treat because you've made the body try harder to overcome the suppressive effects of metformin, fenbendazole, high blood pressure medicine, blood sugar lowering medication, etc. And then you have to, fight something that's, a worse enemy, that's a stronger enemy because it's anyway. So I think the fundamental approach is flawed. You need to address the root causes of cancer, which are emotional, psychospiritual, subconscious trauma, and also in the physical world, toxins in the physical world. So address all the toxins at every level of your being and address all the nutrients at every level of your being, so that you don't get cancer in the first place. GM Ritter says, had long COVID after 3 horrible months of what I was told was Delta COVID. Lost 75% of my hair, had high blood pressure, bilateral pneumonia. Luckily, never was admitted into any hospitals. They were full at the time. I had a great respiratory therapist to help me through it. I spent 1.5, I think, years with pain, ringing ears, fatigue, sleeplessness, exhaustion, tremors, low fevers, other symptoms. Saw my PCP regularly after COVID for long haul, I guess. I don't know. Blood tests were done. Most came back normal, except the usual cholesterol, high blood pressure. Out of the blue, with no warning, I had a thyroid storm with AFib. Never had thyroid issues, and my blood tests 3 weeks before were normal. My question is this due to having COVID, and what else can I watch for, I guess? And I'm unvaxxed. Yeah, so COVID just speeds things up. It just adds fuel to the fire that's already been there. So as you said, you have had high cholesterol and high blood pressure. High cholesterol itself isn't bad, but it's trying to offset something else bad, which is inflammation for some other reason due to stress. And high blood pressure obviously can be bad itself if it's there long enough, and it's also due to something else. It's due to too much stress on your body for too long. So the thyroid storm was likely something coming in your future, and it just got sped up by this, and that obviously can cause AFib when thyroid. So what was the cause of thyroid storm? Was it autoimmune attack on the thyroid? And usually, thyroid storm eventually becomes hypothyroidism longer term. So it's like let's ask, like, what's okay, you're under all this stress. If hypothyroidism is in your future, eventually that means like slamming the brakes, right? But before that, your body is like trying to like you're pushing yourself harder and harder because you're not addressing all these chronic stressors in at every level of your being. It's creating this pressure on you, and you're still trying to push ahead. You're still trying to hit the gas pedal, right? The gas pedal is, thyroid storm is like the most extreme version of hitting the gas pedal, because it's like a shot of adrenaline kind of thing. Too much thyroid hormone speeds everything up. But eventually, like I said, where that ends up is the body just becoming exhausted, and the thyroid kind of breaking and becoming hypothyroid. So it's like the last gasp of like, before the engine explodes and burns out, right? So it's that explosion before the burnout phase. It could be a multiple explosions, not just one. So anyway, I mean, they're imperfect metaphors. So I would say you need to go back to all the different straws that were there before you got COVID that contributed to all the symptoms, as well as later on the thyroid storm, the AFib. So yeah, and thyroid storm is oftentimes usually thyroid attack on the autoimmune issue. At the superficial, like physical level, again, that's not addressing the underlying reasons. Amy says, I keep gaining weight. It's getting worse. I'm walking, intermittent fasting, and watching what I eat somewhat, eating better than I used to. I've gained 40 pounds over the last 2 years. Please help. So, yeah, so this is, again, we have to get to the deeper root causes instead of like trying to fix it from what you think is the root cause, that like, oh, I'm not fasting enough, I'm not walking enough, I'm eating too much, this kind of stuff, right? It seems like that's a comprehensive approach to weight loss, and for some people it is, that those are the actual causes, that they don't exercise enough, they eat too much, right? But for a lot of people, those aren't the real root issues. They're contributors, but they're not the real root issues. So you can like exercise like a Olympic swimmer or something who's in training and lose weight without addressing the real root cause, which could be stress, chronic stress, which elevates cortisol, which makes you fat, due to blue light toxicity and lights on at night and emotional stress and physical stressors like spike protein and other things. So like all this toxins and stressors in general are going to be obesogens, and they're going to make most people fat. And then other things like toxins in your food, and all those things are contributing, lack of exercise. But if they're just like minor causes, minor contributors, like a few of the straws are like exercise and how much you eat and stuff, but the bulk of the straws on your back are like spike protein and other things, then you need to address those bigger causes. So again, it's a matter of addressing things at the underlying root cause, and when you nip it in the bud, then the whole thing collapses and the weight goes away. So you can go on a drastic elimination diet, and you'll probably lose the 40 pounds, but you haven't addressed the really deeper issues that are contributing. And so one of the superficial issues is probably spike protein, but again, that's oftentimes a manifestation of a deeper problem that's been there for your whole life. And so you need to address it comprehensively. Lily Vo says, Dr. Haider suggested on the last live conversation a way to wean ourselves off supplements, herbs, etc. With some, we can't tell if we're feeling better. So I guess continue. For example, NAC, nattokinase, vitamin C, E, various mushroom tinctures, quercetin, CoQ10, omega-3s, etc. I think omega-3s can be short-term helpful and maybe long-term harmful, and then it's better to just eat fatty fish 3 times a week to get adequate omega-3s instead of trying to overwhelm your body with pharmaceutical doses of omega-3. And you can look at Chris Masterjohn's work on this, where he makes a good point that omega-3s long-term can be pro-inflammatory, and in the short term, they can seem to be very helpful and anti-inflammatory. But NAC, natto, even vitamin E, C, you can check microclot levels or even just a cheap D-dimer test. And, D-dimer should go from positive to negative eventually. And, if it's negative to begin with, that may be a problem because it needs to be positive. You need to start breaking down microclots. But once they start breaking down, if it flips back to negative again and you haven't changed anything, that might be a really cheap indicator that you've solved the problem, but you should eventually check a microclot test to make sure. So you want to have a clinical endpoint or like a lab endpoint that you're going after, right? Instead of, like you said, just not knowing when to stop. So yeah, that's what I would say for most of the approaches. And again, I think the microclot test is the single best test for diagnosing and tracking a spikeopathy, along with, get a spike antibody level at least. That's a good additional tracker. But the microclot test is the single best test. Unfortunately, it costs $500, but you could, get a spike antibody level. You get an initial microclot test, and then, if it's too expensive for you, wait until the very end when you think everything's completed, and then repeat it. But you get one in the beginning, and then get a D-dimer and a spike antibody level and some other cheaper things, and then track those cheaper things in the interim. And then once you feel that you're completely better, you're feeling fantastic, you have resilience again, where like you can fly around the world and barely sleep for 2 days and still feel good. Once you've regained resilience and you're not getting sick, and if you're under a lot of stress for 2 or 3 days, it doesn't send you back into long COVID. Once you've reached a point where you feel like you're as good as new, then repeat the microclot test and just make sure that there's no underlying issue, and that you can wean off the NAC, natto, vitamin C, E, and stuff, quercetin, CoQ10. All right, everyone. Let's see if there's any other live stream thoughts or questions. So Sopranos fan 11 says, thoughts on the connection between COVID and parasites. So COVID is connected to everything. It's not just parasites. Like I said, it's like a straw. It's like one or maybe like a bundle of straws that drops on top of the camel's back before it breaks, right? But there were a lot of straws there already. So one of those straws, or many of them, could have been parasites. But I don't think COVID is a parasite. I don't think it's the only issue. So parasites are difficult to diagnose in the West, at least. When you don't have an overwhelming burden of parasites that are easy to diagnose, you could have some very hidden parasites, difficult to diagnose parasites. So it's certainly possible that parasites are an issue. Things like ivermectin and other antiparasitics, chlorine dioxide, and other approaches can be very helpful for killing off some of these invaders that are, again, an intermediate cause in the physical realm for the manifestation of disease. But it can be helpful to kind of jumpstart your ability to heal. So it's not that like healing things at a physical level will never be deeply beneficial, because each level of the human being is interconnected. So changing something on the physical level does change things at the mental, emotional, spiritual, at all the other levels. It's just that sometimes when the primary cause is at those other levels, just shifting the physical might not be enough. You might also need to address those levels directly. So addressing the physical will always help addressing the deeper root causes, which is why like real healers don't just tell you to like go and do some journaling and fix up your emotions and stuff. They do tell you eat this and don't eat that, do this and don't do that, and like go out in the sun and address all the physical causes, because again, there's like deep interconnection and they're all reflections of each other. They're all part Okay, I think I know where I got cut off. So what I was trying to say is that you're not like seven different planes of existence. You're not like a mental mind, a planning mind and an emotional mind and a motivating mind and a spiritual being and energetic being and a physical being. These are all not all separate things that are lumped together. You're one thing, and these are different like facets of that, different ways of looking at that thing, um, different manifestations of that one thing. So working on any of those facets will affect all the other facets of your being. So anyway, that was my point that I was trying to make, hopefully, when I got cut off. Do you think long COVID could be from infections growing from the immune system being down from the acute infection? Yes, that's one of the things it can be. It can be the stress of long COVID can release the Hydra, right? It can release the locked up Lyme co-infections, mold issues, EBV, things that have been locked up and hidden away and like controlled by your immune system can be let out of their cages when you develop acute infection with COVID and all the inflammation that goes along with it. You're less able to fight off other things, or that you've been, fighting off or controlling adequately. So that's one way of looking at long COVID. It's not the only way, and it's not, again, it's like one facet of long COVID. It's one superficial explanation for it. And still, you have to look at it from other levels and see it for its in its entirety, right? So the thing I guess that I'm saying here is that don't simplify things, don't minimize them artificially, too much simplification. And primarily the way that we simplify things to our detriment is by only seeing them physically, and materialistically. Not, a lot of people have moved beyond that and started understanding that energy, I mean, energy is the energetic being, is like scientifically proven fact, right? Like we have ATP, it's an energy molecule. We have the electron transport chain in mitochondria that uses energy. We have, the EKG of the heart obviously shows there's electrical activity, which is energy, right? So there's a bioelectrical, aspect of our being, which is separate from the pure physical aspect of our being, right? They're obviously deeply interconnected, and the energy moves the physical, and it, is manifested physically, but there is an energy way of looking at the body and a physical way of looking at the body. And so, yeah, you can work on, so obviously you have to understand the energetic level, energetic blockages and, energetic deficiencies when you're trying to treat COVID, long COVID, or anything at a deeper level. But then there's other aspects of you as well. There's your emotional aspect and your ability to motivate yourself and your ability to plan things out and your ability to think. And these are all experienced aspects of our being, right? So you can say, I mean, regardless of what you believe, you can say, oh, that's all just like that's all just your mind, right? It's all just your brain. It's all just like chemical reactions in your brain. I don't care what you believe. The point is that you can yourself experience these different parts of yourself and dysfunction in these different parts of yourself, right? So you have certain beliefs about reality. You have certain thoughts that you're thinking all the time. You have certain plans that you're trying to make. You're trying to remember things. These different functions and characteristics of yourself can be related to can be involved in the disease. You can have lack of motivation. You can be depressed. You can be anxious. You can be fearful. So these are different aspects of people that affect their health and their wellness and their susceptibility to disease. Okay. Sopranos fan 11 says, thoughts on Brian Artist advocating nicotine to target COVID as if it's snake venom. So I don't think it's snake venom. I mean, I think Pierre Corey had a pretty good article debunking some of the points on the snake venom theory. So one of the strongest, most convincing pieces for me on Artist's side was that there was a study, I don't know, in 30 people or something, I don't know if it was ever replicated, and they had like all these different venoms in them, in their body, right? They had COVID and they were full of venoms. So the key thing that people don't understand is that there's a lot of there's a word for this. forget the word. There's conservation of molecules across all living beings on the planet. So at our basic fundamental, like the molecular level, we all use the same stuff, right, to do things. So a snake uses certain like toxic chemicals to envenomate, its prey, to inject into its prey. But those same chemicals are created in human beings and other animals when they get sick, for example, right? So just because there's like 36 or 500, venom proteins found in a COVID patient, that doesn't mean that they came from outside, right? Their own body, when it's sick, creates those compounds. And that's kind of at a superficial level, the way that they feel sick is by having all those quote unquote poisons in their body. It's an expression, it's like the immune system is fighting something off. It's like going to war to kill off an invader. That war is going to create a lot of like, damage. And, if you are carpet bombing a place or you're dropping Agent Orange on Vietnam, like this is like metaphorically what's going on inside your body. So yes, there's going to be a lot of collateral damage. There's going to be a lot of quote unquote toxins released by your own immune cells and created by your own immune cells and in your own body as side effects of this war that's going on. So all of those things that were found in the people, they didn't come from outside the people. They came from the people themselves, from their own reaction to the invader. So the venom, quote unquote venoms, are things that are created inside of, animals and other things when they get sick. So nicotine is working at a superficial level, and it can have some superficial benefits and some superficial detriments. And I've seen patients who their brain fog lifted and got better with nicotine, and then the effect goes away. So it's the same kind of like fundamentally flawed approach. Maybe there's some other arguments that can be made for nicotine. The issue is that it's not as benign as ivermectin, so maybe it kicks off spike from the receptors. Great, then you're able to like you've mobilized spike, you're able to break it up with other compounds like nattokinase, NAC, and eliminate it in your urine. So great, you're having that benefit, and at the same time it's raising your ability, your alertness, your ability to think clearly, and so you're like, oh wow, this is working. But some of those positive effects, your body will downregulate them, right? Again, you're adding nicotine, it's combining with receptors. Your body's like, well, this is weird. This is not what, I wanted to manifest brain fog, and now I can't. So I'm going to make it harder for the nicotine to work. And so eventually it's going to lose its efficacy. So especially because it's activating the nicotinic acid receptor, right? Versus like ivermectin, maybe binding to something, but not activating the receptor. So it may be kicking off something from like the ACE2 receptor or like spike protein without actually activating it. So it's binding, but not activating the receptors. So something that activates the receptor will trigger a feedback loop where the body downregulates, eliminates as many of those receptors so that it stops activating the receptor. So anyway, in my experience, ivermectin seems to be more benign of an approach. And there's other things that'll do what nicotine is trying to do, right? Like eliminate the spike protein essentially is what you're trying to do. So there, people are even like, oh yeah, you can, the nightshade vegetables, great, for activating nicotinic acid receptors, but usually not great for most people for other reasons, right? They're usually pretty toxic for people who have leaky gut and other things, and I would eliminate them on an AIP diet for somebody who is sick, the autoimmune paleo protocol diet. So nicotine can be a useful part. It seems to work for at least 2/3, if not more, and of people who try it in terms of like helping with some of the symptoms initially, at least, and it can really cause a really marked improvement. And it may be enough to get you over the hump until your own body can deal with the problem. And then people can taper off. And so some people they'll think of it as like a miracle cure. When it was really just like giving them a shot of adrenaline in the arm to like overcome the negative effects long enough for their body to deal with it. But a shot of adrenaline in the arm itself can be stressful. And so there are some things to say, some ways that you could argue that nicotine might be overall negative for some people. So I don't know. It's something. It's in the toolkit there. It's not the first thing that I go for, but it's in the toolkit of things to use for people. And just going back to that, some people, they just want a shot in the arm and they're not willing to get any other sort of treatment. They come to me and they're like, just get me back so I can work. That's all I care about. I just want to be able to think again and work again. And and either I can't convince them or they don't understand that, yes, I can shoot you up with nicotine or adrenaline or whatever and suddenly give you more energy, but you're just going to break down faster, right? You're just going to break the car faster if you just keep hitting the accelerator and wheels or hubcaps are popping off and the engine's overheating and that's making the car slow down. And you're like, no, 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 just hit the accelerator harder. So I need to be at a certain speed. I need to be going 100 miles an hour cross country, without checking my engine oil or changing it. I don't want to change my engine oil. I don't want to put more gas in my car. I just want to run on fumes, whatever it takes, throw a battery in there, whatever, put some solar panels on, just keep me going. I don't want to stop. Yeah, you can keep the person going, right? Just like Michael Jackson, right? Like you can keep increasing the doses, but eventually it could kill you. Eventually it will kill you. So I don't know. It's hard to convince some people, but that's why my protocol is like, start with lifestyle, start with beliefs, start with positive thinking, start with gratitude, start with visualization, start with all this stuff. Really do it, really give it a good shot, and then consider supplements, and then consider medications, and then consider harder medications, medications that have more side effects and more risks. Even if you have to go through a couple of years, of not feeling that great in order to address the underlying causes, in order to really feel them, in order to notice them, in order to understand what they are, that's better for you than just jumping back on the horse and, taking off again at top speed after 1 month, just because you've, addressed superficial issues and reasons, and because you will be heading for a fall later on. You're not benefiting yourself ultimately. You should set up a health retreat in Puerto Rico where you teach people all the principles of health over a long weekend. Yeah, maybe over a week. I've thought about this. It's expensive, and we'd have to find people who are willing to, pay for the flight and pay for the stay and pay for, all the people that I would want to bring. You'd want to focus on like energy healing and emotional healing and spiritual healing. Like all you need a few different people to be flown in for it. Yeah, I would love to do this. Maybe in Costa Rica, maybe a week-long retreat. Yeah, my go-to retreat. Yeah, I think I might actually own my go-to retreat. Maybe not, but yeah, I bought a bunch of these my go-to domains at one point. Yeah, so I agree. It's hard to go over to really to do it otherwise, right? So in the old days, when these more ancient medical systems like in India and China were really in full swing, I mean, this is what you would do. Like my dad told me, like the ancient healers in India, like they would say, you have to come live with me in my, health retreat place, and I'm just going to be in total control. I'm going to be in charge of everything you do and think and, eat and, whatever. And it's kind of difficult to get to the deepest underlying levels otherwise, unless the person is willing to really learn it all themselves, which some people are, some people who really succeed in this. But it is possible. I mean, I haven't done it myself that much. I haven't really had the opportunity to do that with people. But this friend of mine, Shabazz Ahmed, who's a Hakim and really knows a lot about modern medicine as well, and understands these things at a deep level, he has had a lot of success doing this, even virtually, not even in person, but like virtually, which I find incredible. I mean, it's hard to make a connection. It's hard to communicate, virtually compared to in person. I mean, it's the times that I've sat down and tried to help somebody get to these underlying levels, especially recently, like I find it's like a 3-hour conversation, and it's far more effective just to sit in the same room with them and look them in the eye and, notice everything that all their responses, and, when they start to kind of, their eyes glaze over and they didn't get something, so it's all much easier in person and it's much more effective, but it is possible virtually. So again, coming back to this new service in my GoToDoc, /Hakim, HAKIM, you can check that out if you're really ready to get better. for me to drop out. Basically, I just wanted to wrap up. If there's no other live questions or comments, I'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for watching, and please like and subscribe, and share as much as possible so that we can get the word out on how to actually truly deeply heal from long COVID and other things as well. And really appreciate everyone who's watching. I mean, we're starting to see a lot more people logging on to the live streams. It used to be like 50, and then it was like a couple hundred, and then it was 500, 600. Now it's like nearly 1,300. So it is increasing exponentially, which is, and a lot of that is due to some of the social media people who are working behind the scenes. So Arbaz and Mohammed are helping out here today, Anis. And so really grateful to them for helping us to spread the word on our social media channels and get it in front of people during the live stream and later on. All right, everyone. Thank you all for watching. I'll be back next week. Oh, one thing I want to mention is there is a sale on at mygotostack.com, mygotostack. That's the supplement line. It's 15% off spring sale right now. So if you've been waiting for the sale, now's the time. The sale is here. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.